guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new to this channel, my name is Kaylee June and I'm a beauty and portrait photographer based in Australia. And in the last few years, I've created this channel to talk about all things freelance, creative, and content creation wise because I love this kind of stuff and it's just something that I enjoy doing when I've got the spare time to do so. So in this video today, we're going to be talking about finding your productive hours. So as a freelancer, I feel like this is a really important aspect to running a freelance business, especially if you're mainly working from home. This is something that I've realized after a really long time of being in my own freelance business and wanting to be my own boss and be productive day to day. The problem was that I really didn't know how to approach doing this. And especially if you're transitioning from a full-time job or you're even going from a part-time job into freelancing or into working from home, it can be very hard to stay focused, to stay productive. And unfortunately, you can kind of get yourself into a cycle of feeling not productive enough. That can kind of wage wars with your mental health and it's just not really that fun. So I really want to talk about today how you can kind of start to find your productive hours, especially if you're a creative and working in your own business. So some of you may not know that I am an avid reader. I really love reading a lot of different types of books and anything to do with business, anything to do with self-help. I actually love reading it all. You know, I do take some of it with a grain of salt and some things really just I find that don't relate to me as well as I wanted them to when I initially first picked up the book. And quite often that has happened quite regularly to me. But there's definitely a few standout topics that I've been reading about in previous years that really do resonate with me and something that I found has really helped me in my freelance business and in my creativity. So finding your productive hours, I feel, is such an individual thing for every single person. We do not all work the same. I think contrary to popular belief, we have this system where most of us work 9 to 5 or we go to school from 9 till 3 or whatever it is. We always have this kind of standardized structure about our days and our work life. But unfortunately for many of us, we work to a very different cycle. We work to a very different range of productive hours in which we are most enjoying work, almost on top of things, or ready to go for the day. So the first thing that I really want to mention in this video that I think is so important, and it goes along with the books that I have read over the last few years, I think it's really important to understand your sleep cycle. And I feel that this ties in with productivity more than you might even realize. I've read several books over the years on sleeping and the science of sleep, and I find it so fascinating to read these kinds of topics. In particular, one book that I have read recently is called Bear, Lion or Wolf. This book is by Olivia Arezzo. I hope I'm saying her name right. But she essentially goes through your sleep cycles and basically what your sleep chronotype is. There are 3 sleep chronotypes that she talks about in the book. This is a really interesting book to read for several reasons, and I'm going to go through a couple of them now. So the basic gist of these sleep chronotypes that she talks about in her book is basically centered around whether you may be a lion, a bear, or a wolf. So a lion, for example, is someone who may like waking up very early in the morning, getting a head start on the day. They may like to go to bed earlier on in the evening, so maybe between 9 and 10 p.m. And they also kind of feel like around midway through the afternoon, around about 3 p.m, you kind of have that slump. You get tired and you get a bit drained. And most of the time, lions really like to be up and doing their best work in the morning. That is kind of their most productive hours. The next chronotype is a bear. So they're kind of like the in-between here. They're usually someone who likes to wake up kind of around a reasonable time in the morning, but often they might wake up feeling a bit groggy. They might need a coffee kind of to get them going. And they tend to go to bed at a reasonable time at night, a little bit later than lions most likely, but they do maybe have those issues of feeling a bit slow throughout certain points of the day as well, particularly maybe first thing in the morning. And then you have wolves. So wolves are the opposite, I guess, to lions in the sense that they do their best work a lot of the time later on during the day. You might feel a lot more productive at night. That might be when your creative ideas come alive and you feel like you can't sleep because you've got so much going on in your brain. So quite often wolves will like to wake up a lot later in the morning and they'll go to bed a lot earlier later in the morning, if that makes sense. So wolves will tend to do a lot of their work later on in the day. So you can see there's quite a difference between each of those chronotypes, and I found it really interesting to read into it a bit more. I think it's interesting that she mentions in the book that during your lifetime, you can really go through different cycles of being each of those chronotypes. And quite often as children, we start off as lions and then we kind of migrate into being bears and wolves during the teenage years where we need a lot more sleep, but we tend to be up all night, you know, playing video games or whatever it is. And then we sort of make our way into our more standard, I guess, set chronotype as we get into our young adulthood and grow a little bit more. So for me personally, it's been something that has changed, I think, over my lifetime. And I feel like definitely I used to be kind of in that wolf bear mindset, especially in my teens. But as I've got older, I find that I do so much better work for myself if I'm up early. If I'm up early, at the crack of dawn, 6 a.m. quite often, I just feel more productive. And it took me a while to get into the routine of waking up so early because it wasn't always my preferred choice, especially from working from home. It can be hard to do that. But once I got into a routine of doing that, I just feel like everything sort of fell into place for me with my productivity. And then day to day, I found that I was having my golden hours, in the morning, quite often between the time frame of around 7:30 in the morning and maybe about 1 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon. They were kind of my golden hours for productivity. And quite often, when I get to 3 p.m., my brain no longer works very well. And that's kind of either when I need to take a nap to kind of recharge myself, or I might stop work for the day there if I've worked a little bit earlier on in the day too. So now I would consider myself a lion in terms of my sleep chronotype. And I think that's really something interesting to maybe consider if you're not sure what productivity schedule works best for you. Maybe to experiment with waking up a little bit earlier, or if you do prefer to work later on at night, maybe do more of your creative work then, and really play around with some of your schedule in terms of that, especially if you're working from home or you're freelancing. Some of these things might be best done earlier in the morning or later on during the day for you. I think it's also important to realize that your golden hours don't need to be 8 hours during the day. I think this is also a very standardized thing that has come into effect over the last century about having this 8 or 9 hour working day. And it doesn't have to be that way, especially if you are your own boss and you are working from home or you're a freelancer. You can schedule your time yourself and be a little bit more flexible with this. So personally, I find that 4 hours, 5 hours is a really good time frame for me to get a day's work done within. And I think this is the problem with an 8-hour day, is that there's also books out there that will tell you that 4 hours is a more ideal time to get that work done instead of spreading it across 8 hours. And quite often I've realized over my lifetime, when someone's asked me to get a task done and I've got 8 hours to do it, well, then I'm going to take all day to do it. If I've only got 4 hours, I'm going to work a little bit harder during that 4 hours to get it done. But I think that's also the beauty of it too. If you can get your work done in a shorter period of time, for example, then you're going to have more time to spend on yourself or on your family or whatever you want to be doing after that time frame of doing the work. So your golden hours might be 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, could be more, could be less. It really depends on you and your situation and your working style as well. Now, I really found when I was trying to find my most productive hours, I found it good to kind of take a mental note of certain days and times where I was feeling better or worse. And this might be a really good idea to keep a journal of how you're feeling day to day at certain times. And if you do start to experiment with waking up earlier or waking up later and trying to move your productive hours around during the day, it's really good to take note, whether it's a mental note or whether it's written down, to think about how you're feeling and really write down how you feel you've been productive in the day, and maybe even write down comparisons from day to day to see how you are feeling. As I said, there was always certain times of the day where I felt groggier and I felt less focused, and I could never understand why that was. I always kind of felt like I needed to push through that, which, look, to be fair, sometimes you do need to push through that, and that's where really for me things like having a nap comes into it. I think having a nap is going to always make me more productive because having a 30-minute nap for me will always recharge myself, even just to get through the last couple of hours during the day if I need to. But it makes complete sense that not everyone is the same across the board. So I actually believe that finding your golden productive hours is an imperative thing, and it's something that's very fulfilling once you do find a flow that works for you day to day. And it's always going to be tricky when you've got things like work and study that may not be under your control. So if you're not a freelancer or you're not a creative working from home, then you don't have as much control over how your day goes. And I know that this can be an issue, but especially I think this video is for people who are transitioning into working from home or transitioning into being their own boss and doing freelancing, being a creative. Some of these scheduling kind of questions that you might need to ask yourself might really come in handy for you. Once I did find my productive hours and kind of really fit it in with my sleep cycle as well, I really found that I was a lot more productive during those hours. I was getting things done earlier in the day, making sure that I was kind of working working with my focus too. And then later on in the day, I didn't have to think so hard. I didn't have as much going on, and I could relax a little bit more and kind of focus on myself rather than just my business. So guys, please let me know down in the comments section below what you thought of this video and what you think your most productive hours are. I love to have conversations around this thing because I actually find it really fascinating because everyone is just so different. Let me know if you do have a particular sleep cycle that you're kind of in sync with, one of the chronotypes that I mentioned. If you feel that any of those fit your sleep cycle, I want to know down in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and make sure to subscribe to my channel to see more content in future. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!